The only thing necessary for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. It's important that people wake up to what is going on. It's time that we read the Constitution. It is error that needs the support of government. Truth can stand alone. That was given to us by Thomas Jefferson. Hey everyone, welcome back to The Real Story. I'm still Daniel Happany, and what I have for you, a couple weeks ago, I was able to go down to Washington, D.C. and interview some wonderful people. You may have already seen the show, part one and all that, but I also have, this was the Ron Paul Revolution Rally March. And why I say this to you and why it's important is, here's a gentleman, as you know, I was a big supporter of Ron Paul, and here's a guy who had a march in Washington even after he wasn't a candidate any longer. 20,000 people go to Washington and all stand up and speak with one voice in front of the Capitol building. But what I have for you is I have Ron's speech. And I hope you learn a lot, and maybe it gets you to ask questions, because it's really important who we elect to Congress, not just who we elect for president. It's Congress that legislates. It's Congress that turns around and writes the laws. We'll go over that as we go over the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and other shows. But right now what you should understand is here's a great man, a statesman, not a politician, who the media did what? They controlled, they squished, they did everything they could to, give him, I want to say, vilify him and all that. But here, you get to listen to him speak, and you tell me if he's a villain. You tell me if he lies. You tell me if he doesn't know what's going on. Maybe you've been lied to, and maybe you need to know what's going on. So what I have for you tonight is part two, and hopefully you're going to see a part three of the Ron Paul Revolution Rally March that took place down in Washington, D.C. Enjoy, and let me know what you think.
Big things are happening. The other day I wrote an article for the website and talked about a lot of big things happening. There are big things that are happening that are negative, but this is big too, and we have the answers to the problems that we have in this country. But it's obviously building. If you look at the financial crisis that is building, the other day, Bernanke and Paulson was before the committee. And, I made the point to them that the American people are upset. Everybody has problems, and the government hasn't even admitted there's a recession yet. But all they have to do is get out of this town and find out how American people are forced to live and what they're up against and what's going on in this country. Then they'll realize that we are not on the right track, and we know where the right track is, and that is to follow the Constitution. I've never had a doubt about the message of freedom and liberty and our Constitution. I had doubts whether I was to be the messenger and to lead this charge. Also, I didn't know how many belonged and still existed in our remnant. Our remnant is much bigger than we ever dreamed. But what about the enthusiasm of the young people in the campuses? They've come alive with the ideas of liberty. Now, I don't do any measuring about the mainstream media, but I understand that they didn't give us the best shake, that sometimes we came up short. But what they didn't know about was, you 2 or 3 dozen spammers, how you could spread our message around the country. But no, the results have been fantastic. The response at the local level, at the student level. I can remember one of the early rallies occurred after the debate in Detroit, and that was we went over to the University of Michigan, and I knew we had tapped into something, and I finally realized that young people were listening, and they did care about and understood something about the Federal Reserve System. And then in the last decade or so, since we as Republicans have gone really downhill with the foreign policy has become a very important issue. So I have spent a lot of time on that, but the evidence is out there, and I think this is one of the reasons why there's such a strong response, especially with the young people, when they're realizing what they're inheriting. They're inheriting these problems and the debt and the entitlement system, and inheriting a war that should never have been fought in the first place. Well, one thing I do feel good about is the fact that we have been able to reach many libertarians, many conservative, many constitutionalists that really didn't have much of a home, and they didn't feel like there were enough of them and us out there to really take the position to show that our side of the political spectrum can be opposed to war. And that should be our position. That's the constitutional position. And it's so easy to connect the problems with our foreign policy with our domestic economic problems. Because now we as a nation have obligated ourselves to approximately $1 trillion a year to manage our empire. And it's money we don't have. It's money we tax the people, then we can't tax anymore. We borrow, we can't borrow anymore. Then, of course, you know the answer. Then they go to the Fed and they print a lot more money. Then they wonder why we have problems. You know, it is so clear. Today, there's a lot of talk here on the Hill about solving our energy problems. And on our side of the aisle, they did pick up on one point. It's a reasonable point, but it's almost a distraction. Because they say, you know what we need to do to solve the energy crisis is drill, drill, drill. And that's supposed to solve all the problems. Of course, you know, drilling certainly could be helpful, and if we had more oil, it could play a role. But you have to look at the cost of energy and the cost of our gasoline from a different perspective. One, the value of the dollar.
Yeah.
The value of the dollar goes down when you print too many. When you have a foreign policy where you are motivated to do this, obviously us going to the Middle East to protect our oil didn't work so well. Right now it's so unstable, and with the threat that this war could spread, there's a risk premium put in there on a daily basis. So the foreign policy has pushed that cost of energy up. But then again, the value of the dollar goes down. But paying for the foreign policy in combination with the risk that we have involved, all the drilling in the world won't put, value back into the dollar. We need a sound political system, sound foreign policy, and sound financial system. In the last couple of weeks, I have been going to the floor to talk about H-Con Res 362. Something that should not be brought to the floor. It should be defeated, but rather within a couple days, if not a week, they had 220 co-sponsors. Fortunately, though, this week I was able to quote two of the sponsors of the bill who were changing their minds because they realized it is so aggressive. It is actually literally advocating a blockade of Iran. That won't help us. Now, the best way to get others to realize the danger of this, and I brought this up in the committee as well as on the House floor, consider what it would be like if a foreign country, a strong government came and they were powerful enough to impose on us a restriction that we couldn't import petroleum products, that they would control all ships, boats, planes, and trains and trucks coming into our country, and all the control of the people. Now, what would we as Americans do? I bet we'd be unified and we'd want to do something about it.
Yeah!
But that's exactly what we're doing, and that's exactly what we're threatening. At the same time, we're pretending that our policy is supposed to be undermining Ahmadinejad in Iran. Well, I'll tell you what, if somebody comes and threatens us, we get unified. Just think, after 9/11, we weren't fighting among ourselves because we saw us being threatened, and it brings people together. So the dissidents in Iran right now are being hurt, and Ahmadinejad is being helped. Now, sometimes I wonder if it isn't deliberate so that we always have an enemy out there that we have to keep the military-industrial complex going. It's either that, or they're just, not very smart, and sometimes maybe it'll be a little bit of both. But, we do have the answers. We have the answers. The people have responded well to this message, much stronger than I ever believed. And the magnificent thing over the past year and a half has been the rallies, the people coming together. Because what I have found, and I see it all the time, is the message of liberty and the Constitution. It brings us together regardless of our personal beliefs.
Yeah!